Hi, Dr. Dan.
Shamim, it's good to be here.
Good to see you. Thank you for inviting me to this beautiful place here in Driftwood, Texas. It looks magical and zen out here.
It, yes, this is my oasis. This is my little home office where I do all of my recordings and just can get away from all of the busy office stuff.
Yeah, and yeah, it's you're one of the first people I interviewed for my podcast a few years ago. And let me introduce everyone to you again, Dr. Daniel Stickler. You are a medical doctor.
Yes.
Co-founder of Apeiron Academy, Longevity. It's um, a space for exploring human potential and longevity. And you guys provide all the resources for us to excel in our health, mind, body, and spirit. So you guys converge different modalities, not only medical science, but also spiritual science and functional medicine and a bunch of other things, which I'll let you talk about. Yeah, good to have you again. So I hope I've done justice in our introduction.
Well, a lot has changed since we last spoke on a podcast. So we have divided off our genetics division. So our genetics is now Mosaic Biodata. Took on some partners with that, and there's a major project we're undertaking with it, which will be what we call the large human systems model. It's really looking at an AI that can take a complexity approach to human health and looking at it from a systems approach. So we're getting ready to get that out there and get some funding for it. We have our supplement company, but it's its own division now. It's called Elementals, and we've launched a telewellness so that we can offer a lot of the services that we offer to our concierge clients to the general public at a more budget-friendly price, but still be able to guide them in longevity and health optimization.
Incredible. I love the fact that you guys are expanding and not just not getting too comfortable in one aspect of it, but seeing what can be done in terms of the future of human longevity and health and science. And right now, this is a big topic these days, longevity. People want to live longer. People want to not only increase the lifespan, but also the health span. And, there's biohacking going on the other side. And, there's so many different modalities. So in terms of someone who'd like to get started, someone who is, say, living an average life, does not have a lot of knowledge or not fully, completely aware of their own health, or where is he going, or does not know that he can reach a certain peak state. What are some of the basic fundamentals that you would want to introduce into or talk to them about?
Well, a lot of it is you kind of come to it on your own. Usually it's because of something that wakes you up, a health scare or a friend that has a health scare. We don't just like wake up one day and go, oh my God, what happened to me? But some of these entrepreneurs actually do that. They've been so focused on building careers and focused on achieving success that they have missed the loss of their health that they so valued. And the thing that we do is we reconnect them with their health. We reintroduce them to their inside and outside. So it's about a health that goes deep and a health that goes out. So we talk about the physical health. We talk about the mental and emotional, psychological health as well. So you've got to do that inner work as well as work on the outer work, which is the physical health and the relationships you have with the environment.
And the way I was introduced to you and your organization was through one of the core work that you guys have been doing right now. You said it's a different division. It's the genetics, epigenetics, to work with our blueprint of life, genes. How fundamental it is for us to know our genetic makeup and take measures to use the data in optimizing our potential.
Yeah, we've had a lot of focus on genetics, and I'm here to tell you that genetics is just another biometric. Okay, omics are important. So what we're looking at now with our clients, we're looking at the genetics, we're looking at the epigenetics, we're looking at the metabolomics, and we're looking at proteomics. These are all different aspects of biomarkers that can give us information on the human system. We're also looking at transcriptomics, but I haven't found one that's ready for clinical use at an effective price quite yet. But metabolomics and proteomics, pretty well established. And those are additional biomarkers, just like blood work is a biomarker, any X-rays or MRIs, whatever, another biomarker, EEG. But then there's also other biomarkers like your envirome. So the environment that you live in, what's the air quality index? We look at your biopsychosocial aspects. Are you involved with the community? How are your relationships as far as family, as far as in love and friendships? So we're looking at really a holistic approach to the human system. And in looking from a systems base, I mean, a lot of people will call this holistic approach integrative medicine or functional medicine, but it goes well beyond that, because that isn't quite getting to systems medicine. I mean, if there's any mention of root cause, it's not systems medicine. And if there's a mention of fixing something with the human system, it's not systems medicine. Because a complex adaptive system, which is what our human form is, there's nothing to fix. You can nudge a system that may be in disharmony or out of balance, but it's not broken. And it's just meaning that the connections, there's something going on with the connections in the system. So, you can look at why this woman keeps getting urinary tract infections. And you could say, well, it's E. coli, so it's hygiene issues. Or she has it after every time she has intercourse, so it's a mechanical issue. And that is getting to what people call the root cause. But why is it that this woman, same age as this woman, same demographic, everything appears essentially the same? This woman doesn't get those UTIs, but this one does. And she's involved in the same practices as this one. So you say, well, that doesn't make any sense then. So that's not the root cause of this. And the truth of the matter is, you've got to look at, what is it with this woman's immune system that could potentially make her more vulnerable? What is it about her gut microbiome that she doesn't produce enough of certain substances from the bacteria that block E. coli from utilizing the iron in the body? And it turns out cranberries are a good source of food for a specific type of bacteria that secretes a substance that concentrates in the bladder and keeps the E. coli from utilizing the iron. There's all kinds of places you can go with this, but there's not a root cause. These are all contributing factors. And this is where this root cause thinking gets offline, is there's too much of a focus on it. And what you need to do is look at the bigger picture of the whole system and all the relationships in that system that could potentially be involved.
Thank you. That's the fundamental definition of what a complex system is, right?
Yes.
I remember during the epigenetic certification, which I got a few years ago from your academy, that's one of the first definitions that you highlighted. The idea of the human system is a bit complex, and there is no absolute truth in terms of you can't focus on just one line of cause and effect. There could be like a huge branch-like structure to it.
Yeah, cause and effect is very linear and reductionistic. And if you say root cause, you're being linear and reductionistic. And you can't use linear reductionistic thinking to assess a complex adaptive system. It will work to a point, and you can get just so far. And we've done really well with our reductionist scientific thinking to date. But it's time to move beyond that. It's time to really assess the system the way that it's defined.
And you just mentioned gut health, the microbiome. It's one of the most overlooked aspect that I've seen. Like when I go to my health practitioner, my doctor, he does not talk about the gut a lot. When I mention I might have some issues with my gut, IBS or something like that, I'm having issues in the toilet, he might mention, what are the foods you're eating, but it's a central aspect of a very important engine that fuels our body, connects to the brain, sends, produces neurotransmitters. Can you go a little deeper? How can we take the data we have, or what is the best way to look into our gut and connect it to the whole body?
Well, the big question is what data is relevant and what is not. Generally, I evaluate microbiome tests based on whether they're trying to sell a product also. So they're either a testing company or they're a supplement company. Being both kind of muddies the water a little bit and can bias results. And, what I look at when I'm looking at a microbiome test, I'm looking for pathologic organisms, opportunistic bacteria. And most importantly is the diversity of the gut microbiota. Do you have enough of the Bacteroides and Firmicutes species, and is there good diversity in those? Because a lot of times we get into this habit of eating the same foods and creating the same behavioral patterns constantly. And with that, we get a narrowing down of the diversity of the bacteria that we carry. So the idea is to really create diversity in that microbiome that we carry around with us. That diversity gives us anti-fragility or resiliency whenever an insult could happen. It keeps pathogenic bacteria. They're all present in us, but they can't take hold because the healthy bacteria is in abundance, and that's what you want to have. So it's a matter of looking at the right things in the test.
The word diversity. as you said, we are very in our comfort zone. We only carry out the same practices. We don't go out. Some folks just are stuck in their city life. They wear shoes, always clothed up, but does not spend time in the in the sand, in the parks, like walking bare feet or getting even dirty. Not like the people like, especially where I come from in Bangladesh, you have children walking bare feet. Um, Studying them, I've seen they don't have a lot of. They might have other issues related to air pollution or maybe trans fat and the food quality, but when it comes to gut issues, it's not as prevalent as the world the culture here. Do you so gut testing is? Do you say yes to gut testing, and how often, and what do we after health practitioner views all the data, should they guide you towards, say, probiotics, prebiotics route, or ask you or advise you to change your like, say, food? And
it would really depend. I mean, it would depend on what their lifestyle is, what their food varieties are, and what kind of diversity we're finding. So sometimes it'll involve a prebiotic. Sometimes it'll involve one specific strain, like Akkermansia we use frequently. Akkermansia doesn't do well with other like multi-probiotics. So there's not much in those. So we'll supplement an extra Akkermansia in addition to a broad spectrum probiotic, and sometimes use the prebiotics, sometimes not. Depends on their diet.
And since the species residing in our gut, and not only in the gut, even in our mouth and all over our body, there are certain products out there that sort of creates chaos within us. Like
it's a good way to put it.
The other day, I think I was listening to a podcast where the author is talking about how, mouthwash and like antacids, they sort of disrupt the environment in our mouth. Even antibiotics too. So people without knowledge, without awareness, they have a problem, they consume it. They don't know that the mouthwash that they're using, the fluoride or the toothpaste, is causing that the disruption. So, how do we change the mindset of
Well, one is to get it tested. I mean, we do the Bristle health test for the oral microbiome, and there's a lot it can tell you. And I wish I had discovered it much sooner in life, because, but then again, I don't know if it was at the level of sophistication that it is now. But it can assess the microbiome mix and the different bacteria that can predispose to heart disease, to cavities, to bad breath, all across the board. And they have coaches that can work with you when it comes back to give you guidance on ways to really focus on oral microbiome health and oral health in general. We're starting to do that with all of our medical clients, is getting that test. And then there's another test called EVI, which is a vaginal microbiome test. And that's been instructive in several of our clients as well.
And this is maybe it could mind-body, body-mind connection, because we know the bacteria, they influence our mood and our happiness. Do you think the way we think and we feel could have an impact on the species over there?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a two-way communication, and there's strong evidence on how it affects our mental health, the impact on all of those sensory inputs coming up from the gut, but we're also finding that we have inputs to the gut from the brain to the intestine that can create signals in there. We can change hormonal secretions that will change how the bacteria are behaving in the gut. So that's, again, part of this complex system, is all of these interactions that are occurring. And to think that we can do one simple thing to create a change in the system, probably not the case. You know, taking a prebiotic or a probiotic is not going to create a massive change in the system. The system has a lot of feedback loops in it that, based on your current eating patterns and your exercise patterns and your thought patterns, that are going to try to hold that system in that state. And so sprinkling a little pixie dust of probiotic on the problem isn't going to do much for it. What you have to do is you have to get into a coherent state with the gut-brain axis and see what's out of harmony there.
And so we covered the connection of gut to the body. Let's talk about one of my favorite topics, and it delves a bit into the spiritual sciences, about the mind and certain practices that influences our thought process, our reality, our inner state. And as I've seen from 10 years ago myself, there has been a change of state of a certain evolution because of obviously a desire and intention to change, but also changing my lifestyle, changing my group of friends, creating new habits. So I'm curious, what is your right now, where you are in your life? Can you speak to the routines that you have created, that you have built, that you follow on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, and I try not to be too routine with things, even though there are some that I'm very strict about, like bedtime. Bedtime is generally by 9 o'clock, 90% of the time. Sometimes as early as 8 o'clock. My wife and I have a habit of waking up at 4 a.m. Doesn't matter what time we go to bed. So we try to get in bed between 8 and 9 o'clock. It gives us adequate sleep. And as long as our monitored sleep numbers are good and we feel like we're well rested when we get up, then we don't feel a need to disrupt that pattern. And then we wake up in the morning and we spend the first 4 hours of our day together. And that includes things like meditation or mantras, and it includes just laying in bed and talking to each other, and it includes lovemaking and touch, snuggling together, those kind of things. We'll sometimes talk business. We're co-creators in our businesses, and we will use that time to really talk about deeper meanings of things. And then we generally open our day up at about 9 a.m. to be whatever we need. And we will exercise between the 8 and 9 time frame, or we'll do yoga, or we will do our meditation at that point. We have structured time slots, let's say that, and we're flexible with them, but we also try to honor those as much as we can.
It's beautiful. I love the fact that I love mornings, 4 or 5 a.m.s. Those are, it's quiet. Sometimes you can hear the birds, no traffic. Maybe sometimes the trash car is there, but I love the quietness and the sereneness. And I also love it when, like, if I'm performing some sort of meditation, and then say it, and I see the light slowly come in of the sun,
Mhm.
and it's so beautiful and blissful. And those are my favorite days to generate the emotion needed
Mhm.
to start the day. And like you said, you're dedicating some time with your partner to co-create, to build that little inner harmony that gives you the energy for the day. And another fascinating thing that you and your partner, Dr. Mikra, does is not only you are medical professionals, but also you guys coach others to build that space. I believe you have your coaching group, I think other couples, and so can you speak to us about that aspect of
Yeah, I mean, we have a group that we curate that is it's more of a consciousness exploration group called the Arete Collective, and we've had that for about 4 years now. It's a beautiful group. People come and go in the group, but we have a lot of the original members still in that, and we meet once a week now. We were meeting twice a week, but now we do once a week for an hour and a half, middle of the day, which it's surprising. I mean, we have about 25 members, and we'll have between 18 and 20 members on every call, which that feels good. People are getting a lot out of it, and it's not that we run the group. We're just kind of the facilitators of the group. Everybody is able to bring topics into play. We start every call with what's on everybody's mind, what's been coming up. So it's more of an emergent conversation each week. Sometimes we will make a suggestion of something, but most of the time it's just something that comes up and we roll with it for an hour and a half. And, it's beautiful. And we also work with couples on a one-to-one, one-on-one basis. We will work with them in growing their relationship and deepening their relationship. We really focus on kind of facilitating transcendent love, love beyond the love in the traditional sense, more in the spiritual sense. And it's just such a beautiful place to get to.
It's beautiful. You guys are have many hats. It's wonderful. And now another topic that I like to sometimes bring upon is psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday I met this 73-year-old ex-vet. He does not have everything what I'm missing. He used to be, I forget the name of the sport, where it's like a little boat. It just slides in the ice.
Oh, yeah.
3 or 4. He used to be in the American team. And he started the conversation because he saw me meditating, and he was talking about how back in the days, because he was he's a high performer, back in the days they taught him how to encourage him to do transcendental meditation, and that improved his reflexes. So we started the conversations, and then he told me how he had all this trauma, PTSD and etc. He was, and then he got dementia. He used to get lost in his own neighborhood while driving. So then someone suggested psychedelics, and he started his dose 13.5 grams. And he should tell me for like 1 or 2 weeks, he used to remember everything. And then slowly he tried different other forms like 5-MeO and different things. So some had varied levels of the long, some of them last more longer than the other, and he was able to tap into certain states, brain states and configurations that allowed him to thrive as if he has aged maybe 15 to 20 years back. So some of his memory has, but then he used to have some form of anxiety or something, click, it used to fall back. So it was quite incredible how these substances, entheogens, changes your internal systems. So what are your thoughts on it, first of all, and how often, and we know that you have to have the set and setting, not just randomly do it. But if you want to go in that route, do you see if does it fall into the complexity of the system that we're talking about?
It certainly does. I mean, there's a lot to consider before venturing into psychedelics. You definitely want to be with an experienced guide, facilitator, therapist that is doing this, because there's a lot of people that are just they've had a wonderful experience with psychedelics, and they suddenly will be calling themselves a shaman, and they want to share this. I mean, they have good intentions, but they're taking people along their journey, not taking people on their own journey, which is what a good shaman will do, is not try to make you fit into the kind of journey that they experienced. And I mean, psychedelics aren't for everybody. There's certain people who are more prone to psychosis with psychedelics. I mean, generally, if you have a family history of psychosis, it's probably not the best idea to go into those in anything but a medical setting. But I've seen some pretty amazing outcomes of people, and not even just the psychedelics, like MDMA, which just recently got shot down by the FDA committee. I mean, I've met people that have had dramatic recoveries from PTSD. I've met couples that have done MDMA therapy together and brought them back from the filing papers for divorce to being in love like they were teenagers again. And it's not that it's like masking something. It's actually bringing something out. It's bringing back that memory of the reason you first fell in love with couples, and why that person is that most important person in your life. From the dementia standpoint, it's interesting that he's had such a dramatic result with that. I mean, we know the interconnectivity, especially with mushrooms and ketamine, these really pick up. And so it's like the brain is able to learn new pathways. So it can test pathways that may be better pathways, or it's been stuck in a pathway that is damaged, and now it finds an alternative way around that. I think the possibilities are out there. What we know is very limited still yet. And I'll be curious as to how things progress in this space.
Yeah, it's the world is full of fascinating stories, and even these plants, the discovery of these plants, the ancestral stories behind it, and they think of our ancestors, especially the indigenous people of Latin America and other parts of the world. They believe each object has a spirit of its own, either it be a stone or a plant. And when you consume it, we sort of have this sharing of the spirit. If you go to the Amazon, they revere tobacco, call them grandfather. Peru, you have the coca plant. They chew it all the time while hiking up high altitude space. It's really, really powerful, where we exchange energy just by consumption. It's coming back to food. We're taking something from the food. It's really fascinating to me how everything was put on this earth for us to discover, find, interact, and awaken. And to awaken is, I think, one of I was also listening to another doctor who used to be a scientist and shaman. He was talking about how these days people are so lost in the art of waking up, meaning they would go after ayahuasca retreats one weekend after another because they want to wake up and over again, forget the integration. And that struck me. Yes, that's how I'm seeing, because a lot of this are moving, traveling from the Amazon to the West. You have ceremonies in Brooklyn, California, Austin, everywhere. So, I mean, I hope they're this path, people tread them carefully and also know how to combine the spiritual aspect of it. Because certain traditions, especially, I know you and Mikra have been recently practitioners of the Tibetan Vajrayana tradition as well. And one of the powerful practices is they have darkness retreats where you spend I think 30 to 60 days in the dark. And that's when I have not experienced it, but from listening to other people's experiences, that's where you have this almost a similar visions. You see visions of gods and deities and things like that. At the same time, in a visionary space, if you're not really grounded or not guided, you could get lost in your own fear pattern. So either you are doing any Vipassana dark retreat or in psychedelics, you have to have enough preparation, right settings.
Yeah, I mean, most of the ancient traditions used some vehicles for expanded states of consciousness, whether it be breath work or mushrooms or ayahuasca, LSD, the ergot derivatives. It's pretty ubiquitous in human history and in every culture, pretty much. But it allows for those glimpses. I mean, it's not that it was created for us to wake up. I think it was created for us to realize the connectedness with everything. We've got this philosophy of this selfishness gene, this worldview in the West that has created the definition of success being wealth and fame, attention. And I think we need to get back to the basics. And this young generation growing up with all of the influencers and all of the social media seems to be taking us further and further away from our connections with people, with nature, with ourselves. One very important connection is connecting with ourselves. We look at two selves, a self and an I, and we criticize. Oh, that was so stupid. Well, who's telling you that was stupid, and who's telling who that was stupid? We just have gotten into this disconnection with ourself that needs to be looked at and harmonized and empathized with and have compassion for it, and then extend that out to others.
Well said. Self-compassion. And recently I had the pleasure of meeting David Verdesi. I don't know if you're familiar with this popular documentary, Finding Superhumans. He travels around the world and meets all these humans that have superhuman capacity, um, transmute electricity, utilize the voltage in their body, fire, and different other forms of energy, and ESP and things like that. So it was really, really powerful meeting him. But one thing he told me recently was it does not matter whatever power, whatever you try to cultivate, because if you study the yogic tradition, you've heard of, there's a word called siddhas, and textbooks and ways and lineages to develop certain human capacity, because we don't know our own potential yet. But it says you have to learn how to come back to love of the self. Who is it that is watching? Who is it that is listening? Who is that the self? And even in whether you are in a ceremony having the most beautiful visions, but don't never forget who it is that is paying attention. And it's coming back to what you're talking about, is the idea of the self, the separation. And we need once in a while a remembrance, a certain realization, because we tend to forget. We are fascinating creatures after all. And yeah, what's your out of all these compounds or entheogens, what's your favorite, if I don't mind me asking? Do you have any specific?
I don't have a particular bias for sure. I mean, the different compounds have, based on different contexts of people, can have different values. And even based on their genetics and how they metabolize things, those can have an impact on which one would best facilitate for a particular exploration that they're looking for. It's too easy to say, oh, this is my favorite. Well, why is it your favorite? Is it because it gives you something? Well, will it give another person that same thing? Not necessarily. I think it's being very discretionary about what you explore with and how you use it to explore.
And do you see yourself going towards a direction where you'd be slowly, are you, what's, let me just make it clear, what's your at this current moment in life, I know you're working on a number of projects, what's your ultimate goal that you're seeing for the next 5 to 10 years with all the projects you're doing right now?
It's interesting because I have been more focused recently on really creating meaning in life that revolves around love and connection for people, because I see so many people suffering from a lack of those. And it just is something that when people truly know love and they are connected in community, things don't matter that much anymore. You look at the people in the blue zones, these elderly people, and the biggest thing you see is that everybody's valued, and they know they're valued. And that's what we've taken away from society today, is that people just aren't valued for being who they are.
What is love?
It's everything. I mean, it's going to be very subjective. To me, though, that's the purpose of it all.
It's it can be easily said, but I think sometimes how do we break away from that societal pattern where we're forgetting what it is to love? Because
I think people just need to experience love in the feeling of it, not the intellectual capacity of it. That's what I see when people change, when they actually feel love, not just describe it or intellectualize it.
Was there a moment in your life that you made that realization? Like, was there a specific point in maybe with your partner or going through an experience?
Yeah, I mean, and it's going to be different for everybody. So I don't like to necessarily pre-frame people for it. It's just when it happens, you know it. It's not a, oh, well, maybe that was it. No, it's, you know it when you feel it for the first time.
And like for you, I mean, was it, did it just come out of randomly out of the blue, or maybe you were involved in certain practice with your partner or by yourself, your first glimpse of it?
No, I mean, it was during a practice that we were doing. And interestingly, I came online with it almost a year before she did. And she wasn't sure how to handle it, handle me in that state. But that's something you'll have to talk to her about. I will leave it at that.
I see. Yeah, it's a state where it's very hard to fathom who have not felt it for the first time. You see, I've seen all these gurus and teachers who are living in that state. That you can feel it from their presence. If you come across an enlightened soul, you can see it in their eyes. They just radiate love. Certain traditions tell you, see God in everyone. And there are many frames you can take on it, and there are hundreds of traditions in the East. So, but also I believe we need to experience that state. And yoga also calls it, before you come into a practice of yoga, make sure you're healthy. Make sure you eat the right food. Don't be full. Like, it's tough to practice and sit down and be still without the mind chatter if you have a bad diet. So that's why I feel like, science and spirituality and holistic lifestyle that takes into account all of these elements, they help each other out to find our, own potential. And looking at the, the longevity sphere, it says a human can live up to 120. That's what I'm curious about your thought on it. Can that be expanded in the future, do you think? Where is the science of longevity heading right now with the advent of AI? And
yeah, I definitely think that we will achieve much extended health span. I mean, hundreds of years. Rejuvenation techniques exist, and there are animals in the animal kingdom that can reverse age. There's some that don't age at all. And we are all derived from that one single cell that what is it? It's called Luca, the last universal common ancestor, was the first cell that emerged, and all of everything that we call life emerged from that ancestor. And so anything that we can see in nature is a possibility for us because we are nature. Mm-hmm. And we just have to get better at it right now. But at the same time, not lose that understanding that we are nature and we're connected with everything.
We are nature, yeah. The sense of interconnectedness, like we spoke about. Mm-hmm. I hear there are a lot of now. I'm to just delve a little into the science. We have different therapies right now. One of the things that I've been looking into is peptides. Do you use it in? Is this use it for in your? Do you recommend it to your patients, or do you think it has enough data to suggest the success rates? Because I've heard a lot of people using it in the spheres right now.
Yeah, there's overhype and there's underhype with peptides. The government underhypes it, and a lot of the online gurus overhype it. It's a valuable tool, and I think it's been one of the biggest advances in medicine in a long time is the utilization of peptide therapies. These are, nice thing about them is you can create very specific responses in the system because the system is familiar with these peptides. It knows these peptides because they're made from peptides and proteins that we make. So we know which receptors it's going to stimulate or block or whatever it's going to do. The GLP-1s are peptides. Insulin is a peptide. Growth hormone is a peptide. We have all kinds of them out there, and we've actually recently lost access to a lot of them because the FDA reclassified them. It wasn't that they were having dangers or, a lot of the compounding pharmacies were creating them. And you would think with the volume of people that were prescribed them that there would be a massive amount of complications if they were not good. And they essentially said, we're not turning them off because of complications, but we just don't feel like there's strong enough evidence. And the problem with that is these generally aren't patentable peptides. The GLP-1s, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, they've done manipulations to make it stay in the system longer. So they've taken a peptide, the GLP-1, and modified it slightly so that it can be injected once a week instead of in a continuous flow. And so they've been able to patent that. And, this is a peptide that is paradigm changing in weight loss. It truly is. And you can see when compounding pharmacies can make it for 1/10 the price of what the commercial brands are selling it for, there's a disconnect there. And, there is a lot of benefit that could be had if this were a more affordable option. And it's not like the pharmaceutical companies are losing money. They're making, I think one pharmaceutical company in, I don't know if it was Sweden or Denmark, they made more than the gross domestic product of the entire country. It's a system that is not sustainable in that regard. And there's not enough people standing up and making complaints about it. A lot of these companies are taking university research that has had government money funneled into it, getting the patents on it, that a pharmaceutical company buys the patent, produces the thing, and makes billions. I mean, it's a broken system.
Yeah, and do you what about your recommendation? Is it okay, say for me, or say for like even maybe some loved one? I'm having like they're suffering.
I can't give medical advice, you know that, Sean. No, I mean the peptides, they really need to be given under some form of medical guidance.
Guidance, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something that you should read about online and then just go ahead and do it yourself. I've heard of many people that bought from research chemical companies and they did not know how to mix the peptides, even though they found a website that told them how to do it, and they've overdosed on it. I mean, sometimes 10 times the treatment dose. So I don't recommend playing with this without guidance from a medical professional.
The other day I saw, Brian Johnson. He just takes a needle and just like here. I forget the name of the peptide, but the results you're telling me, he had really great, clear cognition for us. The results are really powerful. So I see the potential risks and benefit that you discussed, and the hurdle of the patent system, of the government structure, and things like that. So that's peptides, and there is ice therapy, there's red light therapy. There's so many different modalities and tools. Let's say if I would have ask you to say, maybe what's the most 5 recommended that you would recommend everyone? It could be natural or.
You're trying to pin me down on these things, and it's hard for me to do because it's very contextual. Mm-hmm. Who is this person we're talking about? What are their goals? What are their preferences? I mean, they can vary. I mean, now we have a new test called Sapir X, which is it's a test that's being studied right now by the FDA. So we got early access to this test, and what it does is it tests the senescence of the immune system, and it also tests the resilience of the immune system. And knowing where these two things sit will guide a lot of what we do. Like, there's some people you shouldn't put on senolytics, and it can actually increase their health risks if you do. There's certain people you don't want to put into a stress response, like with calorie restriction or intermittent fasting or cold plunges. They can have massively detrimental impacts on their immune system. But now we actually have a test that can test whether that works. It can also guide us and say, this person would really benefit from a dose of senolytics. And as this data comes out, we're going to start seeing some really precision guidance on these longevity interventions. But people they'll take something that they'll say, oh, I heard this is really good, take rapamycin once a week. Well, people will say take anywhere from 1 milligram up to 12 milligrams once a week. And that is not a safe range or effective range. So you really want to have some kind of a test that can guide that. And this one seems to be filling that niche.
Thank you for your answer. It's so let's just not just the core of your message is not jump into anything that you hear online or see other people talk about. Do the necessary research and testing, get the data. Your body, your system is unique. It will react differently to different inputs. So I like that. I love the fact that you are in search for the truth. Just go to the data and run the necessary tests. And let's just slightly delve into the work you're doing with, or the future potential of AI and managing all these complexities. You know, our human neural structure is limited in a way, depending on how much we can use it or what has been taught to us. But AI can be trained, you know, to be like 1,000 brains, 10,000 brains, and work simultaneously to crunch data. You know,
Yeah, so our brains can only utilize so many data points to look at interactions and relationships. And, you know, in medicine, being reductionistic and linear, it doesn't require us to have all of these relationships. But in order to really assess the complexity of the human system, you want to be able to access as many data points as possible. And in those data points, look at the relationships to each other. Feedback loops, feed forward loops, internal feedback, long-range feedbacks, impact of hormonal release from one area on different systems. All of this is just overwhelming with the amount of data. And attempts to implement complex systems programs into government healthcare systems has notoriously failed because policymakers don't understand the maps that are out there. What we are doing is we're creating a large human system model. This is a model that can integrate all of these connections in all of these systems. So instead of programming AI with the linear reductionistic model, which is what's out there right now, because I use AI in my practice every day, but I have to be careful on how I ask the question because it has been trained to be linear and reductionistic in its assessment of things. Now, I think it does a better job than most clinicians do. It can identify things that we might not think about. So I use it as an adjunct in my practice. But having one that can think in complexity, that's a whole different ball game. And that's what we want to create. And that way, you just have to collect all of your data on yourself, and it'll start learning from it.
and do you think it's beneficial to the human system to design something that begins collecting data at a very early age, and for you, for you know, for let's say you have a child coming up, so if you set up a system, talk to the right people and the clinicians, and taking data and giving, obviously taking privacy into account, and using that data for your health and well-being. So, but starting at a very early age, not when you're 30 or 40, when you realize you have something going on. Do you think it's something that is going to be developed in the future in medicine?
I think it is, because already we are looking at things that can predict probability of disease 8 to 10 years ahead of time before any symptoms occur. As we gather more data, we'll be able to get that predictive model of emergent properties that can occur. But we also need to consider that context is going to change as well. So we can look at the context of somebody that was born 30, 40 years ago and say, in this era right now, what was it back then that could have predicted this? But now there's been a lot of changes in the environment and our food system and our climate, all of this that's actually shifted the context. And so it's still just a probability assessment. It's not, you're not going to get absolutes. I mean, there's no absolute answers in any complex system because it's adaptive. And it has unpredictable emergent properties that can occur. So you never know. And you just get comfortable with uncertainty.
It reminds me of, I was watching this show recently called Outlander. It's the premise of the story. This lady, she travels through stones in the Scottish Highlands. She's in the 1900s. She goes in the 1600s. So she works as a nurse in the military. So she's seeing all this, diseases pop up. She can recognize them, which back in the days they should think it's the work of the devil, the spirit. She sees measles, typhoid, and she's vaccinated. So some of the stuff is going to touch her. So it's really, really powerful paradigm of prediction and looking into the past, crunching the data, things like that. Yeah, thank you for. It has been a super enlightening conversation with you always. I know we can keep on talking because our conversation can diverge, and I know you have something super interesting to speak about every topic. Is there anything that I was not able to touch upon that you were really curious to express?
I don't think so. I think we went everywhere with this one. Yeah.
Cool. Dr. Dan, it has been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for your time. And yeah, I hope to keep this conversation going, and I wish you the best, where you're taking the art of longevity and, health and livelihood, bringing in different elements of mind, body, spirit, not only looking into the root cause, your passion for understanding complexity, your desire for to seek love and community. So it's been a pleasure. You are a great inspiration. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. I think you have to press stop. All the way on the left. Right. You see the red button? Left, left, left. No, not that one. All the way. Yeah.